Welcome to the Asian Supermarket. I'm your host Christina from America.
And I'm Carmen from Australia. Welcome to the special 10th episode of Asian Supermarket. We're in the double digits, yeah! Our guest this week is Tiffany, who has a super interesting background, being a Korean who spent most of her childhood in Paraguay and then America. We have a fun episode coming up all about Paraguay, how she grew up and the different cultural identities that she had to deal with in her childhood.
So grab your favorite chips and salsa as we chat with our guest in episode 10. Hey everyone, welcome to the Asian Supermarket podcast. Today we have episode 10, double digits. So today our guest is Tiffany. She was born to Korean parents in Asuncion, which is the capital of Paraguay. She grew up there until she was 11, moved to Florida for high school, and then to New York for college. She's currently in Washington to finish her master's. So welcome, Tiffany.
Hello.
So Carmen, how did you guys meet each other?
We met each other actually through a friend in Korea. And yeah, last time we saw each other was 2019. We hung out in Seoul for quite a while, went around, ate a lot of good food. We actually got our first tattoos together. We got piercings together. So yeah, we're pretty good friends. And yeah, we've known each other for quite a while. Yeah, why don't we go to our icebreaker? So Tiffany, what is your favorite Perinian dish? Is that how you say it?
Paraguayan.
Who said Paraguayan dish?
Paraguayan, yes. I know a lot of people say like Paraguay or Paraguay, but so I have two that there's so many dishes, but two that are more like traditional that I wanted to talk about. One of them is called Bodhibori, which is, I think it's in Guarani, which is the other language spoken in Paraguay. And it's essentially, it's a soup and it's we eat it a lot in the winter. It's kind of like a brothy soup with a lot of veggies. And they have these little like corn flour balls, like corn flour with cheese. I feel like it's very similar to like matzo ball soup. I've never had it, but it looks very similar, and it's just really good for the winter. It's like feels like a warm hug. And my other one is beju, which is probably one of the most like traditional dishes in Paraguay, which is also made from corn flour, cornstarch. A lot of corn flour used in Paraguay, and with cheese. And it's just kind of like a doughy, cheesy bread or cake. And we have it a lot for snacks with coffee, tea, and also eaten a lot during the winter. But those two are the foods that I crave the most when I'm away from home.
For our fun fact, we just want to say that about Paraguay. So Paraguay is a landlocked country, and as Tiffany said, the main language is Spanish, but the other language spoken besides Spanish is Guarani. Is that how you say it?
Yeah.
Guarani, which is also their currency. So that's the name of the currency as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oh.
So like, so for us, $1 is equivalent to like 1,000. So we say 1,000 Guaranis.
Guaranis.
Yeah.
Wow, your accent is so pretty when you sing.
Can you tell us more about your work, just about yourself?
Yeah. So currently I am in grad school in Washington, D.C., and I'm actually going to be done this year. Hopefully, I'm thinking hopefully in the summer, hopefully in December. It's a Master of Physiology because I'm actually preparing for dental school. And this isn't a requirement for dental school, but I wasn't ready to apply immediately to dental school. So I'm just doing a master's right now. And then actually this summer, I will be applying to dental schools.
How was your childhood like in Paraguay? Like before meeting, I've never heard of this place or met anyone from there. So I'm super curious.
I know it's such a small country. When you think of South America, people think, I think they think of Brazil because Brazil is the biggest country in South America. Yeah. And a lot of people think of Chile, maybe like Puerto Rico and, other countries. And definitely Paraguay is not a very known country. A lot of people don't even know it exists. So especially because I'm not ethnically, Hispanic, it's even more odd that people look at me and they're like, they always say this when I say, oh, when sometimes they hear me and my brother speaking Spanish and they say, oh, I would have thought you were Asian, because they don't put two and two together. And I say, no, we are. And they're like, but you're speaking Spanish. So it's a very interesting conversation to have with strangers.
Why don't you talk about that? Like when you're growing up, is there a big Asian community over in Paraguay or?
So I think it's large, considering that it's such a small country. But I don't know the exact number, but I think whenever I was living there was actually a larger Korean community. Right now it's declining a little bit. A lot of people have moved back to Korea. A lot of people actually moved just to Argentina, Brazil, for business purposes. And I think maybe like less than 5,000 people, 5,000 Koreans. There's also a lot of Chinese, not as much Japanese people, more Japanese people in Brazil. Growing up in Paraguay was very weird because I went to an international school. It was a private international school. And I am not even exaggerating. Like our entire school, kindergarten to 12th grade, was less than 500 people because it was a private school. And I was one of 2 Koreans in the entire school. And the other Korean person is actually, we still talk because we were the only Koreans in
I thought you were going to say the other Korean was my brother. And I was like, yeah.
Oh, wait, you're right. Okay, so 3. Me, my brother, and someone else. Yeah, the only person I knew was James. But it was super, super, there were just no Asian people. I think apart from me, there were 2 other Chinese people, but Korean people, very little. And my best friends were all Paraguayan, everyone was, non-Asian. And when you're little, you don't really understand the concept of race and ethnicities. I mean,
exactly.
Unless you really like learn about it, you don't really know because you're a kid. And I grew up thinking I was Paraguayan because it was my first language. I actually didn't speak Korean when I was younger. My parents would speak it to me, but I didn't really understand. So my mom had to like mix Korean and Spanish with me. And I always replied in Spanish. I didn't even know how to say hi in Korean. So I grew up thinking I was full on Paraguayan. I wouldn't even notice that we looked different. It's that like very naive child innocence. And as I grew older as in like first grade and stuff, I started realizing that I'm different. It's like, Mom, we look different. Why do we look different? Why do our families eat different foods and speak different languages and stuff? So once you start having that like identity crisis, it's really hard because I feel like you try so hard to fit in. You want to be, you don't want to, nobody wants to be considered different. And I think that, and then on top of not knowing the Korean language, it was like, well, I'm not Paraguayan, but I don't feel Korean because I don't speak the language. I think you know this about me, Karma, right? I don't eat spicy food. So eating the food is also so like, I can't eat Korean food. I can't speak Korean, but I have to be Korean. So it's hard. Yeah. It was hard just like coming to terms with that. And I started learning Korean when I was around 9 years old. I was just kind of really fed up with not understanding Korean. So I actually self-taught myself. I started listening to music. I started watching dramas that my mom used to watch. I would just like sit next to her and watch. And I would actually go to my computer and try to like type out words, just like look at a word and like try to type it out to familiarize myself with the letters and stuff. So I think once I started learning the language, I started coming more in touch with my roots and my culture and just better communication with my parents for sure.
Usually at home, you guys speak a mix of like Spanish and Korean.
Definitely. It's so weird because it's different for every member of my family. Like with my dad, I purely speak Korean. I actually speak like what's the word? Like 존댓말. I do formal Korean. Yeah. And then with my mom, it's informal, but I mix Spanish and Korean. And then with my brother, I speak only Spanish. Like we don't speak anything else.
And
Wow.
today, what do you identify yourself more as?
See, it's so hard because I'm like so split into threes. Like I'm like 33% everything. And it's like in one way or another. And it actually sucks because I wish I was more fully one thing. That way I could fully identify with one side more. But I don't even know. I think my mentality is not Korean at all. I think I don't have a very Korean mindset, but I do have Korean values. But then language wise, I'm more comfortable speaking English. But then I don't know, like traditions, I feel like it's more like Paraguayan. So
Yeah.
it's really hard, yeah.
But that's what makes it so nice because you've had so many different experiences that a lot of people haven't been able to have. It's not that you're different or anything. It's just that everyone is like special in their own ways, right? So it's so nice to be able to have so many influences on your culture and you growing up and how you've embraced all of them. But yeah, no, I would love to hear more about the different cultures, the Korean cultures or the Paraguayan cultures. Like, is there anything interesting that you can share with us? Like what holidays do you guys celebrate? Like what traditions do you have?
People in Paraguay are more like people in America. They celebrate big holidays with their entire family. They have huge extended families. They value family a ton, like a lot. And I feel like they just celebrate a lot of those things, and it's always with their families. And in Korea, for example, for me, my family is so spread apart. Like some are in Korea, some are all around the world, some are in Brazil, some are here in Atlanta. So we've never had that like big family tradition experience.
Then you were talking about mindsets earlier. So I was just wondering, what are some Paraguayan mindsets?
I feel like I said, a major thing is family. I think I feel like Asian families, when it comes to their children, they value a lot education, or marriage maybe, and maybe like a good job. Of course, these are all values like that differ from family to family, but I feel like at the core of raising their children, these are very core values. And education in Paraguay is not that like at the forefront, it's especially because a lot of people end up working for their family business. So it's kind of like whether you graduate from college or not, it's just kind of like you're going to continue the family business. And of course it's not for everyone, but a lot of families are like that, again because they do have extended families. A lot of my friends, for example, work with their cousins or their aunts company and etc. So I think that's a major difference. Also in Paraguay, Catholicism is the most prominent religion. I almost said language, religion. So a lot of people are very devoted Catholics, go to mass every week, and then they have first communions and things like that. They also do here, I think in the States, is sweet 16s. They have quinceañeras. So that's a very huge party that all girls do.
See that you go back to Paraguay pretty often, right? So you're still quite in touch with, your friends there.
When I do go, I always see them, it's our class is small. I consider small compared to the classes here. We had 45 people in our grade. They're the students that I've been with them since I was like 4. So we went to the same preschool until I left Paraguay. These are the same people that were in my class. So it's like their family, essentially. We have seen each other since we were little boogers, and we've seen each other grow. So when I go, it's like we always get together, all of us. Like the gatherings are like 20 plus people, and that's like a normal gathering for us because we're so close knit, and these gatherings happen weekly, like every weekend. It's just like party at some house, and we just all get together. I feel like that's how most people are there. They're just so, like I said, very family oriented and just have this really tight loyal bond.
So fun, like before Tiffany would snap me when
Oh
she's like
yeah.
hanging out in Paraguay. And it's like, oh my God, like the clubs that look so crazy and like the music is so bomb that I was like, well, I want to go and experience this.
Oh, yeah, take us next time.
I know, you guys, it's so fun, especially because I mean, I don't know, when I think of, like parties, they say, like Ibiza, Spain, whatever. I feel like that's kind of the same vibe in South America. Like partying in South America is crazy and people, because there's not, especially in Paraguay, there's not a lot of nightlife. There's not a lot of really things you can do, especially in
Yeah.
Paraguay. There's really nothing you can do.
Like do shops close quite early and things?
It's not even that, but it's like, for example, we only have two malls in and there's two malls and then like two movie theaters, and there's just not a lot of things to do. There's no places of attraction. I mean, not no, but there aren't many places to tour around.
Yeah.
So young people, there's a lot of bars, a lot of just clubs, brunch places, and stuff like that.
Then for transportation, is it pretty easily accessible, or you need to have like a car or bike or?
So most people have cars, but there's also people who live farther away from the city but do live in the city. There's a lot of buses. So most working people take the bus, and there's no metro. There's not Ubers. I think Ubers are not as common, but most people take the bus, and then at night, for example, they would take cabs.
How long does it take to, in some countries you can drive like from one end to the other?
No, not for the whole country, but maybe for the capital, yes. Because the thing with Paraguay is that it's not like a tiny, tiny country. It's just that, for example, if this is Paraguay, it's like this is the capital, and like everything up here is just like land. It's like rural areas, so there's not a lot of population there. It's just like farms and rural areas. So when you think about just the areas where people are actually living, it's very like a small concentrated area.
So more farmland versus not like jungle lush kind, right?
Not jungle-y, more farm, because cattle raising is the main source of income for Paraguay. That's like the main production. So a lot of cattle, a lot of, I think, corn as well. But yeah, so a lot of just rural farm areas up north.
What about Korea? So I know last time we met, like we hung out, it was like 2019. Do you go back to Korea often?
When I was a kid, almost never. I think before high school, I've only been twice. Once when I was really, really little, maybe like 4, and then another 8. And it was only because we have family there. So my cousin on my mom's side, my cousins and my aunt and uncle and my grandma are there. Yeah, we didn't really go as much. And then I went again in high school once. And then in college, I went twice. That was the last time I went. And honestly, I don't know when I'm going to go again, especially if I start dental school. It's going to be really hard to travel. But yeah, I don't go as much. I wish I did.
You just want to hide behind the mask of like, no, I'm an American. After you do, graduate, where do you see yourself working? Like, could you speak about maybe that, and then maybe like any differences between the work culture, like the education cultures between the US and Paraguay, maybe even Korea, if you know anything?
I want to stay here to work, especially if I do go to dental school here, I would have to work here.
Oh yeah.
My dad wants me to go back to Paraguay, and I actually don't know this exactly, but I think I can get my license here and still work as a dentist in Paraguay. But of course, like terminology and everything is going to be different. But there are a lot of dentists in Paraguay, but it's definitely not even is it not as lucrative, but it's not as, I want to say respected, maybe, it's not as esteemed profession as it is here, especially because being a third world country, healthcare is not great in Paraguay. I don't know if you guys probably didn't see, but there's actually a lot of protests right now in Paraguay because of lack of healthcare and just the government's like how they're handling COVID. And of course, all around the world right now, no government is really handling it great. But there is a lot of issue because I think Paraguay is one of the countries with the lowest vaccines like in the entire world right now. Not even in only South America, like in the entire world. I think the total, last I checked, the total doses given were like 30,000 total. And being such a small country, there's actually a lot of cases. There's 10 times more than Korea, I'm pretty sure. And it's such a small country, and people are complaining that there's people that can't really afford healthcare. They have to like sell their houses to afford a medication that should be given to them for free, for example. So healthcare is definitely an issue in Paraguay. So I would rather not work in healthcare in Paraguay, given the conditions. And it's tough. It sucks because anywhere in the country, you know, the medical field is important and definitely crucial. They're definitely essential workers. So yeah, it's one of those countries where it's just not handled well. But in terms of any just regular medication, for example, I don't know, insulin or birth control or something like that, it's just people are not having access to simple medications that they should have access to, which is why mainly people are complaining, and the government has gotten a lot of donations for vaccines.
And I'm curious, since you know you're local there, is there any insider travel location or like, you know, not the common foods you would try, you know, anything?
This is hard because, like I said, Paraguay is not exactly a top tourist location. A lot of reason why people would go is honestly for what's the word, like volunteer work. There's a lot of, you know, those their medical outreach programs. I actually wanted to do a dental outreach to, I think, Dominican Republic. So there's a lot of outreach like that for Paraguay. So not a lot of people go like thinking, I want to explore Paraguay. So there, because there's not a lot of, for example, it is a landlocked country. There's no beaches. It's a pretty flat country, so there's no mountains. There's really no major tourist attraction. The only touristy places really are like cathedrals or historical buildings, presidential palace, and things like that. For someone visiting for the first time, I think definitely trying those like hole in the wall places, you know, whether it's restaurants or little breakfast places. There's this one breakfast place which is not, I feel like it's a very local thing, but it's also a very popular place. It's called Café de Acá, which basically means the coffee from here. But also café can mean like breakfast. You know, like I'm morning coffee is kind of like, okay, you're having breakfast. And I post about this place every time I go to Paraguay, so I'm sure Carmen has seen it. But they have a really nice selection of breakfast ranging from traditional, for example, they have veggie, they have other traditional Paraguayan foods, but they also have a lot of American foods. Like they have French toast, which is not something that is served a lot in Paraguay. Pancakes, it's not served a lot. So they have that, but they also serve dinner, which they have more like traditional dinner meals as well. That place, and it's also located kind of in a very like, not the hub, but a lot of nightlife around that area. So
Paraguayan breakfast.
There's this one dish that I really like, scrambled eggs with mandioca, and it's basically, I think in English it's yuca root. Have you had that? It's a type of, not a potato, but it's a starchy.
It's like yam, is it? It's kind of like yam.
It's like yam, but it's not sweet.
Like the brown thing with the white, right, inside?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
So you like cut them into little pieces and you fry it. So we eat it a lot fried. Sometimes we eat it boiled. When we have barbecues, that's like the side. Like instead of fries, we have like boiled, not yuca, mandioca. So you kind of like scramble it with eggs, and then you put a little bit of bacon in it, and it's really, really good.
Growing up, did you eat more like Korean food, or was it more like Paraguayan food, or like was it hard to get Korean stuff over there?
So I want to say yes and no. Yes, because it is imported, so all of the goods are extra expensive. But no, because there were, like I said, there is a pretty prominent Korean Korean population. So there's actually a Korean neighborhood where it's just like there's a lot of Korean. There's a Korean bakery, Korean restaurant. There's like a karaoke. There's 2 Korean supermarkets there, and it's just a whole street, like a strip of Korean places. And there were 2 or 3 Korean markets back then, even. So it was accessible, but it was expensive. But I actually, and so this is why I always ask my mom. I always ask my mom why I can't eat Korean food, or why I can't eat spicy food, because my brother can eat spicy food very well. And so, and we both, grew up under the same roof. So I don't know what it was, but growing up, I apparently really liked Paraguayan food, and I still do. I still prefer actually American food over Korean food or Asian food. My taste is more Western, definitely, especially because I can't eat spicy food. So I grew, like I said, the main food in Paraguay is meat, meat, and then potatoes, corn, rice. So I grew up eating a lot of meat. I know Carmen's a vegetarian,
That's fine.
but I grew up eating a lot of meat, and I always preferred like lunch and dinner meat, and then breakfast like still eggs, protein. And my brother liked more rice and soup and kimchi and things like that. So it's really, I think that's why it's so cool, because you can live in the same family in the same country, but still like 2 people can grow so differently. But what's weird is that my brother is like, he can eat Korean food better and everything, but he speaks Spanish better than me. And I speak English better than him, because when we moved, he was older than me. So when we moved, I was still kind of young. So I forgot a lot of my Spanish. My brother had more exposure to it. And I started school in America when I was a little bit younger. So I had time to have more like English foundation.
Was English one of the main languages that you spoke growing up, or not really? Because I didn't really hear you say English when you were talking about like how you spoke with your family. Did you learn that, like, was most of your English learned when you came over to the States, or like did you learn it a lot when you were younger? Like, do most Paraguayans, are they quite like fluent in English or not really?
So to answer your last question, no. A lot of do not speak English. They're actually a lot of, I don't want to say a lot of, because it's really relative, but majority of the population in Paraguay is, more poor. There's a huge gap in classes, like a very, very big gap, which is one of the major issues and why it's a third world country. But since a lot of the population is more poor, there's a lot of illiterate people. So not only can they not speak English, there's a lot of people who can't really speak Spanish fully. They mainly speak Guarani. So I guess that's why higher class people don't speak Guarani. They speak Spanish, and then lower class people speak Guarani mixed with Spanish. And even if they do speak Spanish, they can't really write or read. So in that sense, a lot of people don't speak English. I think the only people that do speak English is for work purposes. Obviously there's more global connections now that the economy is growing and everything. And I went to an international school, so we learned English at school, but it was very like, it wasn't, they didn't teach us to be fluent. I think they just kind of taught us, I guess, to prepare ourselves for, if a lot of people did go to university in the United States. So it was kind of like preparing us for that. But when I moved to Florida, my English was pretty bad. I think that accent wise, I didn't have a huge accent. I mean, I did, but it wasn't really bad. But when I look back at my essays or assignments, my grammar was very poor, and the grammar in Spanish and English is very different. So I would write my sentences kind of like in the Spanish grammar. It was really tough. I struggled a little bit in school in the beginning, but I think because I was younger, I was able to learn faster.
I feel like most of the Asians residing in Paraguay, do they stick more with kind of like you, immersed in that culture, identifying as more Paraguayan, or do you feel like since there was so little of the Asian culture, like little niche groups there that they kind of wanted to stick more with their, parents' culture?
So I think it really depends. I think there are people who, it also depends on whether they were born there or if they moved there. So there's a lot of Koreans who moved there when they were older. I have a friend who she moved there, I think probably in her teens, young teens from Korea. But so she grew up more, Korean culture, and she kind of stuck with the Korean community. If you were born there, I think growing up with other Paraguayan students in your class from whenever you're 3, 4 years old, you definitely get more in touch with Paraguayan mindset and Paraguayan culture.
And you speak what, Guarani?
So at our school, we actually had a Guarani class. It was a separate class.
Is it very different from Spanish?
Because the Guaranis are also people. They're indigenous people. So that's why our language is Guarani, because they're the native people of Paraguay. Not pronunciations, like accents and apostrophes and the little squiggly. There's a lot of words in the word.
Teach us something.
Like I know 5 is po. 5 po. That's all I remember.
And then Spanish, cinco, right?
Cinco, yeah.
Cinco. And how do you say 5 in Korean?
There's there's taso. Spanish, depending on which country you're from, Spanish is different. We use the same words, but there's still, we do, but we don't. For example, there's, I think for Paraguayans, we use a lot of different words from people from Mexico and Spain. And I think even from Ecuador. And the most interesting thing about Spanish is that there's so many slangs, and there's so many country specific slangs. And I think most of the slangs that probably American people know are from Mexico or Puerto Rico. But one of the cool things about Spanish in Paraguay is that you, for example, in Spanish. So it's tú.
Is it yo? No? You?
No.
So okay. Two. Yeah.
Little Spanish lesson.
Yeah.
So it's tú everywhere in the world except for Paraguay and Argentina. So we don't use tú. We use vos. A lot of slang from Paraguay actually originates from Guarani, which we don't think about, but it's just kind of like conversational slangs. For example, like in American, you say, I don't know, like legit or extra or things like that. But a lot of them originate from Guarani. For example, we say che, like che, is kind of like hey you. It's like che Carmen, and they use it a lot in Argentina as well. But from what I know, that has Guarani origin. Another thing that we use a lot is niembo. When we say, oh, she's acting like she's a professional, let's say, you would say, oh, she's acting like she's a niembo professional. So there's a lot of things like that we use in our everyday language, but without even thinking, because we grew up listening to people saying it.
But so you can tell like what part, like where they are from when you speak Spanish to people, you can tell.
I can tell definitely Spain because they have such an accent. Argentina because they actually, so like me is yo, like yo. So usually people say yo, right? And this is also like little like semantics, but in Paraguay we say more like yo, like more like a J. But then in Argentina they say sho. They change a lot. Yeah, it's really weird because they use a sh a lot. My name is, you say like yo me llamo Tiffany. I think you say yo me llamo Tiffany.
Wow, but it's all written the same. It's just how you read it is different, how you pronounce it.
Then we like to usually chat with people to see how, the dating life is like around the world. So can you tell us a little bit about like dating, romance, marriage, stuff like that?
It's so sad because I left Paraguay when I was so young. I didn't get to experience dating in Paraguay, which I'm so sad
at 11 dating.
It's like, dang it.
But yeah,
like even if I did go back, I never stay longer than a month. It's like I'm not gonna date for a month, but I would love to, just because I want to know what it's like to. But from what, again, I feel like my experiences are so concentrated in one area because I'm just talking based on the people that I do know. But again, because Paraguay is such a small country, everyone kind of knows each other. And that's like a very broad way to say that. But for example, my like people from our school know a lot of people from like 5 schools down, so they kind of all know each other, and then they also all introduce each other. Like I said, we always have really big gatherings. So for example, if this weekend I'm going to have a gathering at my house, I'm going to invite you guys, and then I'm also going to invite my other friend group and like my other friend group. So then you guys are going to meet that friend group, and like, and then through them you meet others. So it's like that's kind of all interconnected, and you kind of just date people from those friend groups. So I don't want to say an issue, but I feel like from what I heard from my friends and just from what I see, they all end up dating each other. Honestly, it's very hard to find someone who hasn't dated your friend, especially if your friend groups are kind of, you know, like know each other. What I heard from my friend, one of my closest friends, what she told me is that one of her struggles is that she is kind of reserved about dating because like it's such a small country and community that she's scared that people are going to talk, you know, like, oh, you know, she's dating this guy, and like everyone's going to like spread rumors or something. And two, she's worried that it's going to be someone who has dated her friend, which is actually what happened. Yeah. And in terms of marriage, I think that like I said, family values are very, very, you know, like important. And marriage is very sacred, I want to say. The divorce rates are very low in Paraguay because of this. But in terms of having kids, there's a really high pregnancy rate because they're a Catholic country, abortion is illegal. So, and I think because it's also a Catholic country, birth control it's not illegal, but it's frowned upon.
It was so nice talking to you, Tiffany. I hope, you know, our listeners had a good time. I hope you had a good time too.
Thank you so much. We learned so much from you today.
Thanks for having me. And
Join us next week for a mega interesting episode with our friend Robin, a California-born Cambodian who fell in love with his roots, went back to Cambodia, and is currently working with the 9-year-old princess of Cambodia.